Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone's had a good experience at Ship so far. Thanks so much for coming to the workshop today. So I'm Malavika. I'm a product manager here working on our security observability product areas. And I'm joined also by my colleague, Casey Gowrie. He's one of the engineers leading our networking and security products here at Vercel. And today, this is an interactive workshop so that you can learn how to secure your applications with the Vercel Firewall. Awesome. So I just want to take a moment to walk through our agenda for today's workshop. We'll start with a high-level overview of Vercel's network architecture and how the Vercel Firewall fits into the request lifecycle of your applications. We'll then take a look at some common web attacks and how you can protect against them using the Vercel Firewall. We'll do a full walkthrough of how to configure the Vercel Firewall and use some of our observability features, anything that we haven't already covered so far, and we'll end with some Q&A as well. The goal of today's workshop should be really interactive. We want to query our Vercel data with our native observability tools. We're going to create firewall rules, update our firewall configuration. So hopefully this is interactive and not just me talking at you. I did have some optional prerequisites. I don't know in the audience. Again, I'll show everything on my screen, so none of this is required. But I did recommend that ideally you have Observability Plus on a Vercel team, and you have a project on this team with production traffic. How many people in the audience have an Observability Plus subscription? Okay, we've got a few hands. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that so I can leave time for people to explore and author their own queries. The other thing, how many people have a test project where you can actually edit the firewall configuration? Okay, cool. I think people also have that, so I'll make sure that I don't go through that too quickly. Again, I'll do everything on my screen and demo it, but ideally, this is I think the best if you're able to replicate it in your own environment. The other thing I'd be curious to know is people's familiarity with network security. How many of you, this is your first time using a firewall product? Oh, awesome. And then how many people this is, you are familiar with firewalls, but you're not the person responsible in your company for administering them. I think that's most people in the audience. And then how many people you're like DevOps person and you've unfortunately, a few people, you've unfortunately had to administer too many firewalls in your life. Cool. And with that, I'd love to start by providing just some high-level context about Vercel's application delivery network. As you already know, as you heard from G, Vercel is a comprehensive developer cloud. We don't just host your application. We're architected so that we can optimally build and deliver your dynamic, personalized application to user anywhere in the world. We want to reduce the burden of managing infrastructure, and this includes your CDN. We have over 100 points of presence across the world. I think you actually saw a map earlier today in one of the keynotes. Once a request ingresses at one of these points of presence, the request goes over private fiber to one of 19 edge regions. And because this is an interactive demo, actually one of the first things I'd love to do if you have Observability Plus is actually query your data. Let's see. So I am going to look actually at the nextjs.org project. And I am going to ask the query builder to show me edge requests by edge region. Awesome, and I can actually see here are the 19 edge regions, and this is all of the different kind of edge regions where any requests to the nextjs.org website come and ingress. As we can see, we actually have Dubai listed as one of the edge regions as well. This one actually just came online a few weeks ago, which is very exciting. But I'll give you a moment if you're curious to just see kind of where your requests are served from across the world. Awesome. So the other thing I want to actually take a look at is how does a request get handled once it actually comes to Vercel? So once a request first ingresses into Vercel, the first thing that happens, it gets evaluated by the Vercel Firewall. If the request is allowed by the firewall, then Vercel will handle any subsequent routing logic. This is redirects, rewrites, middleware. Once the request is routed, if we have a cache hit, the request will be served from Vercel's edge cache. If not, we'll fetch the updated content. If needed, we'll invoke a Vercel function. And actually, similarly once again, we're going to make this a bit interactive. And you can actually see how a request gets handled directly in your runtime logs. So I'm going to ask everyone to, and anyone with a Vercel account can do this. If you want to look at your runtime logs window, this is a hobby project I have on my personal account. And we're just going to look at one of the log lines here. And this is our runtime logs within the Vercel dashboard. And if we look here on the right-hand side, we can actually see for this given request, it was allowed by the firewall. We can see that there was some middleware as well involved. And then a function was here invoked. And we can actually trace the path of the request right through kind of the Vercel network directly from the logs tab. So you can see how the request was handled by Vercel. So I'll let everyone again take a moment to just, if you're curious to see, maybe this is new information, maybe not, to look through your logs. So continuing on our network architecture deep dive, I'd love to just break down some of the different kind of aspects of the Vercel firewall. And so the first thing that happens when a request ingresses into the Vercel firewall, we terminate the TLS connection, and then we apply our system level managed firewall rules. This layer of protection is designed to stop DDoS attacks, low quality traffic, and generally protect the Vercel platform from any kind of abuse. We also at this stage evaluate whether or not you have any persistent actions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, or IP blocking rules at this stage. If the request is dropped at this stage, this is before you are this counts as an edge request. And if the request is allowed, it then kind of goes through to deployment protection. And then deployment protection will assess, does this, if the source has access or not to the deployment. If it does, it then gets evaluated by the WAF. So there's a few levels to the WAF. The first thing that gets evaluated is if you have attack challenge mode enabled. That's the first thing we'll look at. If it is in fact enabled, then every request will assess. We'll make sure for every client, we'll check for the presence of whether or not they've a cookie to assess whether or not they've solved a challenge. We'll issue a challenge if they've not, if we don't see that they have solved a challenge. And so this is the first thing that happens that we evaluate from the Vercel firewall if you don't have attack challenge mode enabled. And again, we'll do a demo of that. If it's not enabled, the request will just kind of continue on normally. The next thing we look at is then all your custom WAF rules. So we will evaluate any custom WAF rules that you've created. Those will then be evaluated. And then the last thing we'll evaluate from a kind of WAF perspective is the managed rule sets. So we'll look at which managed rule sets you have configured. And then, if the request has still not been dropped at this point, we'll then evaluate those. Or bypassed, if you've got a custom WAF rule, that's a bypass rule that'll apply, and then we won't evaluate the managed WAF, the managed rule set there. So I'll stop there actually if there's any questions. Awesome. So as you can see, network security plays a critical role for any Vercel user. As we spoke about earlier today, the Vercel firewall, especially the DDoS mitigations, are on by default for all Vercel projects. I think security of Vercel isn't just about application reliability and data security, which is, I think, often what firewalls are used for. But because Vercel is infinitely scalable and your cost is usage-based, this is really also about protecting your application against any unwanted traffic. And this has financial implications. And so that's why and again, as you heard earlier today, that's why we've really built our firewall focused on the modern dynamic web. I think historically a lot of the managed rule sets that you'll find in a lot of traditional legacy WAFs is really focused on, I think, the web of the 90s and the early 2000s for applications written in PHP, not sort of your modern web applications, and really more focused on the kinds of threats facing, I would say, again, web applications in the 90s, and less so, I think, the reality of what web security is today. And what are some of those common attack patterns? And so I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about that. So one of the most common attacks on the internet is a denial of service attack. A denial of service attack occurs when your application is overwhelmed with a large amount of network traffic. And it's usually generated with the intention of taking down your site. Realistically, if you want to take down someone's site, you're probably not trying to make requests in a browser. You'd need tens of thousands of devices, if not even more than that, to actually successfully take down someone's website. So what a threat actor has probably done is compromised a number of devices and endpoints using malware or looking at vulnerability endpoints, and then is using kind of command and control server to control those devices and then attack someone's site. This is generally not a common attack pattern I would say like all websites on the internet. Certainly no one's trying to take down my personal website. There's nothing to be gained by doing that. But if you're a prominent brand, or if you operate kind of a well-known site, there's a high likelihood that someone might want to take your site down, partly because they want to disrupt your business operations. They might want to, they might not like what you have to say, especially if you're, in the media industry. Maybe somebody wants to censor what you're saying and they take your site down. Or you have a lot of money that they think that they can extort you for a ransom payment. Those are some of the common reasons someone might try to launch a DDoS attack. And so with the Vercel Firewall, you can be rest assured that your application will be automatically protected against any volumetric DDoS attacks. We provide DDoS, as you heard earlier today, we provide DDoS mitigation across L3, L4, and L7 of the network. These protections, as I said, are enabled by default for all customers so that you don't have to worry about someone coming and attacking your site. You don't have to configure anything in advance. This is on by default. They're also designed to protect the Vercel platform so that no, traffic to one single site doesn't take down the platform for all our other customers. Granted, again, the scale is quite large that attack would have to be to take down all of Vercel. And as I said, you don't have to do anything to use our system mitigations. But if you are concerned, if there's a lot of customers who don't want Vercel to be shaping their traffic, or maybe you might have legitimate traffic that is looks like a DDoS attack and you want to make sure that it's loud, you can always bypass that as well with a system bypass rule, or just disable the system mitigations altogether.
One question.
Oh yeah, of course.
How do we conduct these penetration tests just to make sure it's working?
Yeah, so this is exactly one of the common use cases for the system bypass rules. So ideally, you have a way to identify the traffic for your pen test. Maybe you've got like a header or something that you can use to identify that traffic. I would say even more ideally, it's just egressing out of a static IP. I know that that's not always the case, but again, I think the easiest way to identify it, it's egressing out of a static IP. It's not a shared IP or like a dynamic IP that would possibly also have attack traffic. We can allow, effectively allow list that whatever those signatures are, create a firewall rule to allow that traffic so that the system mitigations don't get applied. Now, actually, let's look at that right now, because actually what I'm going to go to is. So this is just, again, a demo site. And if I go to the configuration, actually I'll go back. There's two ways, right? So first, I would not recommend just disabling your system mitigations altogether for 24 hours. You can only do this you can either write a specific rule, and I'll show you in a second on how to do it kind of permanently. But you can use this kind of easy button. This is if for some reason you have a large amount of traffic that's legitimate, that's tripping up our DDoS mitigations, you can disable all system mitigations using this button for 24 hours. But I think to your point on the pen testing, if I go into configure, and I just kind of scroll down here to a system bypass rule, here we can add a system bypass rule and then configure that rule right here to ensure that that whatever, again, that traffic is allowed. So these system bypass rules are, again, you got to specify by IP address and then also specify the host name so that we can identify, again, this is kind of more specific to our implementation, that again, at the DDoS protection level, whether or not we should allow the traffic to go or not. Cool. Any other questions? Actually, and what I wanted to show, this is not a good, I'll go back to so showing you again, going back to next site and our DDoS mitigations. And you can do this in your own app. Actually, this is a good opportunity to look at your own projects. So I'll give everyone a moment to maybe navigate to the firewall tab of their own projects.
So how long it usually takes for this cloud to detect, like, it's around the because sometimes, what is that there? Sometimes it's around a lot of investors coming in, but it needs to check the patterns.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually a good question for Casey.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, actually, do you, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
What's the time to mitigation when you see a lot of requests? Like, how long does it take for the system to assess whether or not a DDoS is?
So the system firewall mitigations, the automatic like L7 mitigations, for example, the median time mitigation is about 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, medium time, if in case anyone didn't hear that, medium time is 1.5 seconds. Cool. So perhaps you're in the firewall tab now. You can actually see here directly. I think what everyone will see by default is that the firewall is active, and you can actually see for the DDoS mitigation, and this is again on next site, how many requests have been challenged and how many requests have been denied by the system mitigations directly kind of on this dashboard. And as I had mentioned, if you do disable the firewall, sign away my life, all the usage. You can then see here we've got a warning sign so that you're well aware of the fact that the system mitigations have been disabled. And I'm just going to re-enable these. So this is the typical state that you'll see. And it's on.
Notifications if someone enable or disable this firewall.
We don't send notification. It'll show up on the activity log of the fact that the configuration has changed. We don't send a notification if you have made a change to the configuration. That's actually an interesting point that you'd like to get an alert if someone actually disables it altogether. So we don't do that today. We do send alerts on when there is DDoS traffic. You can actually, if you go to settings, and then we go to webhooks. I might not actually have the settings. I need to make sure I have the right settings and the right, but I can probably do this in, I think this is a hobby project. But if you go to the webhooks page, and you should be able to configure, actually, let me see. You should be able to configure on this page, again, assuming you have the right access settings, notifications. Sorry, let's see. Where I wanted to go. Sorry. So on the webhooks page, you can configure notifications so that when you get a DDoS attack, and if it reaches the threshold, which I can never remember off the top of my head, it's in the docs. I think it's 100,000 requests in 30 minutes. Because I think because the traffic that we stop, sometimes it might be blocked by system mitigations. It's not always a volumetric attack. It could be like a low quality IP that we see is like attacking other, like, we see bad traffic from it. We might block traffic from that IP for your project as well, even if it's not actually triggered, like the level of a DDoS attack on your site. So if you actually have a DDoS attack and you reach this threshold of traffic, you can then set up alerts as well so that you can be notified. But so to answer your question, not for what that specific use case, but we do have some alerts.
Do we need to set the firewalls each at the project level, or we can set a group and apply for the whole? Like, because I have multiple domains, so I can't go for each and every one to set up the firewalls.
It's at a project level today. One of the things we're working on is team level controls, and Casey can probably speak to that more. But I would say that you don't have to do it entirely manually. We do have an API to control, like if you go to the Vercel docs, this is my kind of, if you go to the docs for security, I'll just show you. Firewall, API. API documentation's been changing, so this is not where I want to go. But anyway, this will walk you through the instructions on this page of the docs. You can actually use the Vercel API to effectively create a script so that you can apply, like, very easily apply your configuration across, like, if you. Yeah, exactly. And we've got a Terraform provider as well if you're using Terraform. And the documentation, this is roughly in the Vercel docs. You can find all that documentation. Awesome.
So, and we are talking about this API. So, do we have a capability, let's say, request within a fixed time frame, number of requests going in with over X number? Can we enable this challenge through some API call and all? Can we automate completely?
You could. It would require some level of sophistication, like in being able to wire that up. So you'd probably first need to you'd probably want to drain out, or actually, you could do that only if
because I will give you some context, like what I'm going to do, I'm going to use drain, and then it will go to Datadog, and then from there it will be triggered, like
exactly.
The number of errors going up, and then simultaneously the number of requests also went up. So automatically I want to take decision to enable this whatever challenge within the system. So is it possible?
Exactly. Yeah, you can. So you can do that. If you're using Datadog and you set that up to where you have sort of those automated workflows, you can. I mean, it's effectively you just make you can just use the API and make whatever configuration changes you want. You could. I think. As you described, you can do that directly in Datadog. There's other services like Tines. We don't have like a Tines integration, but you can also use Tines to set up some of those security automation, orchestration and automation kind of response type workflows if you want.
So this challenge thing also exposed by API, like there's this JS challenge, what is not, it can be enabled or disabled by API. So it's everything in the API.
Yeah, I mean, so any of the configuration changes are all in the API. So that you can change. Now, the caveat on log drains, though, is that log drains doesn't include the DDoS requests. Anything that is like effectively anything that's dropped before it becomes an edge request for your project. Part of that reason is because we don't want to DDoS your log drains endpoint. So those requests won't show up on your log drains, just as you're thinking about what those thresholds are. But I mean, if you're setting up alerts based on error rates, I mean, that's going to be anything those will be requests that will show up on log drains. Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. So I will. These are all really good questions. Awesome. So just actually one last thing on DDoS protection too I wanted to talk about is, I think I want to clarify too that what we have as our system mitigations isn't just protection against volumetric attacks. This is effectively any kind of, I would say like a managed rule set to block against anything that we think is a security threat for any project on Vercel. So if someone is performing path enumeration, as I said, if there's suspicious IPs that we see generally doing bad activity on the internet, we'll drop the request. So it's not just volumetric attacks, but really trying to, and we're constantly monitoring traffic and making improvements to those rules. I don't know what's going on with this loading thing. I think if I step away from, I'm so sorry. Oh, Keynote. Here, I'm gonna do this for a second. Awesome. So the next attack vector, which we've talked a little bit about today already, is bots. Today, bots are one of the biggest security pain points for developers. About half of all internet traffic comes from bots. And again, as we heard earlier today, a lot of this is critical web infrastructure like Googlebot. Some of it serves critical functions like uptime monitoring or end-to-end testing. So we don't want to block all automated traffic. But the vast majority of bots, about 2/3 of bot traffic, is used for malicious purposes. Some of the things that bots are often used for are launching DDoS attacks, which we talked about earlier, scanning the web for vulnerable endpoints or fraud. And so we've talked a little bit about how we've stopped, and as I mentioned, we talked a little bit about how we stop bots, especially when it's kind of suspicious IPs as part of our DDoS protection, anyone making large volumes of requests with similar signatures. But there's lots of ways that you can stop bots using Vercel's security tools. This has actually been, as you again heard from earlier today, one of our areas that we've really focused on from a product development perspective. This is an area where we've invested a lot in over the last few months and continuing to invest in. We really want to make it easy for everyone at Vercel to monitor and control bot activity on their projects. This is also, I think, when we talk to customers, a huge pain point, especially for those of you in the e-commerce sector. I think bots really just are a huge issue. So just last month, we, again, if you were in the keynote earlier today, you heard our bot protection rule set went GA. This is a free managed rule set available to everyone, including hobby customers. And this is in the WAF, and it allows you to monitor bot activity and prevent any kind of unwanted automated traffic on your site. We also launched a rule set to block AI bots outright. You can just deny the traffic, and we'll do a demo later of our managed rule sets. One of the things I'm really excited about, we've got the Casada team as well in the audience, which we announced is our partnership with Casada and the feature Bot ID. This feature is an advanced kind of bot management solution, and we've really partnered with what we think is a leading bot management vendor, really, I think, pushing the edge of bot mitigation, and they're really studying the tactics and techniques of some of the world's most sophisticated threat actors using bots, and that we're making it really easy to implement that in your own Vercel projects with just a few lines of code. But those are kind of the ways that you can use Vercel specifically to stop bad bots on the internet. But those are some of the ways that you can specifically use bot protection solutions to stop bad bots on the internet. But we also, I would say that there's many other protections that are quite effective. Custom WAF rules are generally really effective as well. A little bit painful, a bit of whack-a-mole, but you can use, rate limiting, I would recommend for everyone as a best practice to have a rate limiting rule. You can secure your /API route, secure any sensitive paths, like maybe /login as well, with a standard rate limit. And again, just to something that you think makes sense for your application. And then we can also kind of you can also deny any traffic outright of any suspicious signatures. Any questions there? Yes.
How are you distinguishing between crawlers and malicious bots?
Yeah, we actually, I'll let Casey answer.
Do you want to pull up bots.fyi?
Yeah, let's do that.
So with all these rule sets, we try to distinguish between verified bots and unverified bots. So verified bots are bots who basically are who they say they are, and we can prove that they are based on looking at request signatures or IP addresses that they publish. So we have this like kind of catalog of both, again, like this is all known bots, and then like all the bots that we verify. So you see like, ads bot Google, that's verified. So if you turned on bot protection, verified bots are allowed by default through bot protection. So you wouldn't turn on bot protection and start blocking Googlebot or start blocking OpenAI. You could block those via user agent in a custom rule if you wanted to block those. But by default, we feel that if a bot is who they say they are, then they're good actors. And so we'll let that be by default. And it's up to users to kind of take it from there. But you can visit this site and see like all the bots that we verify. So every request that comes to the network gets this treatment. And then also, if we see people pretending to be Googlebot, for example, via these same verification mechanisms, we can kind of block that traffic automatically for you. So if someone's using a Googlebot user agent and they're not coming from the IP addresses that Googlebot publishes, it's not Googlebot. It's someone trying to bypass kind of less sophisticated mitigations where people are just going to say, oh, if it's a Googlebot user agent, hold on.
One more question. For example, the Vercel setup of this thing, it doesn't work out for me. I can still stick with my AWS map and shield or add your friend door setup and I can still work with it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Nothing mandatory that I have to set it up on Vercel because I'm hosting it.
Yeah, I mean, today so depending on who your reverse proxy is, you might have to do some configuration to make sure. So with CloudFront specifically, there is some manual steps. So if you are using CloudFront, I'd say write a support ticket in. We don't publish those exact instructions fully for each, mostly so that no one can bypass our security protections by kind of imitating those reverse proxy providers. But so if you write a support ticket in, then we can give you the instructions on how specifically for whatever third proxy provider to make sure that we are not blocking those requests as a volumetric attack. I think the main thing is that when you do have a proxy in front, I mean, they're man in the middling the traffic, so we don't have full visibility into what the signatures are. Exactly. And so then we might accidentally think it's attack because it's a bunch of traffic egressing out of the same static IP. Obviously we know okay, this is Akamai's IP space, but actually it's not always clear. I mean, Akamai is constantly changing data centers. I think recently we had a customer who had a bunch of traffic egressing out of Japan, one of the Akamai's Japan data centers, and they hadn't done this configuration step. So I would say that if you do have a reverse proxy in front, make sure that you've done the kind of, and it's in the Vercel documentation, but there is some additional manual steps depending on who your reverse proxy is, or your CDN provider is, just to make sure that we handle the traffic properly.
And you don't have any concern. If I have an Azure friend door, I set up everything in Azure, just traffic comes to Vercel. It's the same whether it is AWS or Azure or any other, whatever the cloud I have.
Yeah, I mean, you can put any CDN you want in front if you want to. Yeah, and I think the reality is that for many of our customers, the security team, those WAF rules are not managed. If you're an individual engineering team using Vercel, and maybe you're using it as hosting for a specific set of applications, and you've got another team that has a mandate to, you have to use this other CDN product. Obviously we support that, and we have many enterprise customers in that situation. The reason we don't recommend that setup though, and it kind of goes to what we had talked about earlier in the keynote, we're really and this is why we've gone into the firewall product. We really want to make sure that, performance is what we're about. It's kind of I often use the analogy of you've bought a really slick iPhone and then you put one of those OtterBox Defender cases on it. And that's kind of what I think putting a CDN in front often is it's you've bought Vercel, and so much about what we do is giving you a very performant website. There's a lot of kind of complexity in our caching layers. There's a lot of sophisticated networking that's going into this. And it's kind of a shame to lose all of those performance gains by then sticking a CDN in front. And I think Elk Chop spoke about this earlier. You know, they reduced their time to first byte by removing Akamai. So that's why we don't recommend it. We'd prefer that you use our security tools. But again, we know that that's not always the case for everyone. I saw there was another hand up, so I want to make sure that you had your question answered.
Yeah, so even if the reverse proxy is getting blocked for some reason, it would be clear from the Vercel denial dashboard that this request is being blocked, right? Like that data isn't dropped from the right?
You can see, yes, you can see by IP. I won't demo that directly because IPs are a PII, but yes, from the Vercel dashboard, if I were to click on, I'll just show it very briefly. If I click on DDoS mitigation, you'll then get a breakdown by IP. And actually, I'll just do it for this one IP. You can see, yeah, the ASN.
There's a reverse proxy from Netlify that's getting a bunch of 504s on the Netlify side and not logging on the Vercel side of things. But it's been difficult to track down that logging. It's really clear in the dashboard that the IP address can be blocked. Like, I'm not sure if that's another edge case to call it.
Is this a specific case that's ongoing now? Or did it happen?
It's been ongoing for a while, like months.
And this is what's the reverse proxy?
Netlify.
So it's a Netlify proxy to Vercel.
That's right.
Okay.
Do we have their IP space as one of
No,
the,
because they don't publish one.
yeah.
But I can see from, like, we have a multi-tenant app, and I can see that the path that they're hitting is not getting denied to the rate that they're seeing in the Netlify side.
Okay.
I'm happy to.
Wait,
The follow, yeah.
And we can definitely look into that.
Yeah.
Like the Vercel Edge Network or blocking traffic would not serve a 504 status code. But yeah, we can definitely help you triage that.
Amazing. Okay.
Oh yeah, and if anyone has issues, like it certainly shouldn't become like a month's thing. Please let us know. We're always happy to look into it.
We're pretty sure it's on the Netlify side.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I just wanted to make sure though, and you're always welcome to make, like we're always happy to help you look into any issues. Awesome. So, I did actually, sorry. One thing I did want to show before we move on, again, for next site, is we talked a little bit about bot traffic, but I just also wanted to, and this is actually something I think you can all do in your own, or in your projects as well, but I actually wanted to just show you can actually look at the requests by bot name as well. So I'm just going to bring him down by bot name.
Can't see your screen, Malavika.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Oh, it's probably because we talked too long. Do I need to, is it gone asleep?
Yeah, there we go.
Awesome. Okay, so cool. I'm gonna look for edge requests broken down by bot name. We can actually, I'm gonna exclude this one. And we can actually see the bots on the Next.js website. I think this one, it's always, we were actually looking at whether or not we could turn on the bot protection rule set on the Next website. We had seen that actually, unfortunately, a lot of people crawl it for information because it is quite useful for people to be able to understand how the open source project works, and the people were crawling the doc site. So we ultimately couldn't turn it on. But I mean, this is actually, if everyone wants to take a moment and this is one place you can look at it. This is actually also available in the dashboard if you use Observability Plus. This doesn't have any data, but I can show you where in the dashboard. You can actually see, if you go to the Edge Requests tab, you can then kind of filter by a range of categories, and I can actually look at by bot name as well. And again, there's no requests to this site. This is just a test site I had thrown up, but you can filter your data this way as well, and you can do that in your own website. How are we doing on time? Oh, actually, I think we took a bit longer. So we can use the rest of the time to do a walkthrough of the features. I don't think we have that much time left together. Would we like to go into Q&A? Does anyone have any questions that they would like to talk about as well? Any other further questions? Or I can kind of walk through the firewall. When time does this workshop end, actually? Oh, we've got 30 seconds together, so I think we'll probably call it here. Hopefully this was useful. You can, if you have any questions at all, you can always find myself or Casey. You can find us in the happy hour. You can also, if you have any questions, or if your security team or DevOps team have any questions, you can send us a message. We're happy to jump on any call and walk through as well how to use these features. If there's members of your team that need any training as well, this is something we've done as well. We're happy to schedule a session where we can walk through and whether it's our security tools or observability tools, we're always happy to kind of do a walkthrough as well. I'd be curious too if there's any feedback, what you would like to see from a security and observability perspective. If anyone has any comments. No comments.
This is great, thank you.
Oh, no, thank you so much for your time. Aw, no, thank you so much for being here. I will not keep you from drinks. So go enjoy your drinks and we'll find you. Thank you so much for your time.